Hi, I'm Reed Holson. Welcome to Sioux Falls Directions, where we sit down and have a conversation with... Got me screwing up already.
Yeah. Blooper reel.
Yep. 11 departments. I always muff on that. We have 11 departments.
Oh, okay.
Right? Right, Murph? Yep. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Reed Holson. Welcome to Directions on City Link, where we sit down and have a conversation with one of the 11 directors of the City of Sioux Falls that are appointed by the mayor and serve you as a citizen of Sioux Falls. We want to welcome today Stacy Kooistra, our city attorney. Welcome to the City of Sioux Falls. You've been here a while, obviously, but welcome to City Link.
Well, thanks, Reed. It's good to be here.
Well, let's get to know you, Stacy Kooistra.
Okay.
What did you do before you came to the City of Sioux Falls? Tell us about your background.
Well, going way back, I'm a product of Northwest Iowa. Grew up in the country just outside of Rock Valley, Iowa, and went to USD out of high school. Spent a couple years there, and then transferred up to USF and graduated from here in 1994 with a bachelor's degree in psychology. From there, I went overseas and lived in Sweden for a time, and where I met my wife, and then came back and counterintuitively enlisted in the Army. Enjoyed 5.5 years on active duty as an enlisted soldier, and then was commissioned in 1998 as an intelligence officer. So spent approximately 3 years with the 1st Infantry Division at Fort Riley, Kansas, and then came back to South Dakota for law school. So graduated from law school in 2005 and entered the private practice. Spent a couple years in spearfish practicing, and then came back here to Sioux Falls. And so since 2007, I was in private practice until Mayor Tenhaken reached out in the summer of last year, and by the fall, then I started with the city. That's my civilian career. On the military side, I spent a couple years in the Army National Guard during law school, and then was out for a period of time while I was in spearfish, and then came back to Sioux Falls, and during that time I then was offered a position as the Deputy Staff Judge Advocate for the 114th Fighter Wing of the South Dakota Air National Guard, and have been with them since then and to this day. So been very thankful for all of those opportunities.
Oh, thank you for your service. We appreciate that very much. Let's talk about the structure of the city attorney's office, because you're not called a director, you're the city attorney, but you oversee this department of the city government. Talk about the structure. How many people do you have, and what do they do?
Well, we have 8 attorneys as we speak, and then there are actually staff members in various capacities in our office. We have 4 assistant city attorneys in the city hall itself. Right now, we have contracts. Well, there are a host of departments and areas that we're spread out through, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about the city attorney's office, is that it does touch a lot of different components. But as far as the origins of the city attorney's office and how it's structured, it's actually unique amongst the departments in that there's a city charter that basically spells out the structure of the city, and it carves out the position of city attorney, which basically has a duty to both the administration, the mayor, and the city council. So we have by charter, it's a circumstance where I was, of course, appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. But when it comes to my potential termination, that would be one where it would require both bodies for that to occur. So, and that's significant, I think, for the citizens to understand, because what I've found in my 7 months in this position is that having an independent and basically distinct role is important to ensure that both the mayor and the council get the best advice possible, and that there's as bright a line between the law and politics as possible.
Well, you also serve the citizens now. One of the functions is obviously not to give legal advice to the citizens of Sioux Falls, but there are areas, and we'll talk about your interaction with city government when we take a break after a little bit here, but let's talk about how you serve citizens, because the city attorney's office has a lot of interactions with us as taxpayers.
Well, that's a great point, and what I would emphasize to people is that really, and I've described this in different ways as I've learned about it myself, but really we have one client. It's the city of Sioux Falls. Okay, the title is city attorney. It's not mayor's attorney. It's not council's attorney. But when by charter and by ordinance, practically speaking, what that means is we give advice to the mayor and to the council. So we don't represent individual citizens. That's what private practice attorneys are for. And so at the end of the day, what makes this an interesting position is that the driving force behind that is not the politics of it, it's the best interest of the city. And of course, reasonable people can differ about what that means. So that's why we do our best to cite the law and to give a fair, unbiased opinion as to what the law provides, whether that's the city charter, city ordinance, state law, federal law, whatever the case may be.
And you have some interaction with citizenry. For instance, if you need a license of some kind, liquor license or a peddler's license, or even a license to use the sidewalk, that's a function of your office. ADA, Human Relations Commission, those types of things.
Right. Yeah, we do have those different departments. You touched on the code. So we have a code enforcement arm. We are a prosecutor's office when it comes to violation of city ordinance. So there are civil and criminal aspects to that. Speeding tickets, parking tickets, all those types of things fall under the criminal realm. On the civil side, when it comes to neighbors disagreeing about whether somebody's maintaining their property appropriately, of course, we turn to the law to see if that's the case. When it comes to the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, that is a section that we have that deals with claims of discrimination. Of course, there are many aspects of discrimination that are illegal. They're the ones that have been designated by law as civil rights. And so people can come to our office and we'll help them fill out petitions. And so that they can seek relief through that process. And we do have a commission of citizens that meet to help make those determinations in that process. On the ADA side, the Americans with Disabilities Act, we have an enforcement aspect to that as well to ensure that the laws are complied with so that our fellow citizens that have disabilities aren't discriminated against or compromised in their ability to function as well.
And people need access to the ADA function or the human relations type commission work. There's information on our website at siouxfalls.org. Also, they can stop in at City Hall.
Absolutely. We have our office hours are 8 to 5, and we have an administrative assistant who's there, and we'll receive them and again help them through the process, because nobody comes in knowing how to do that,
right.
And we understand that, so we're there to help in that regard.
And a big focus too of your office is fair housing, because there's discriminatory issues out there with people renting, and that's an area that you help with.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, because that's actually one of our BHAGs for people who've followed city government and Mayor Ten Haken's
big, hairy, audacious goal. For
exactly.
The year, right?
Yep. And one of our BHAGs is a housing clinic, because one of the things that we recognize is that there are a lot of those landlord-tenant issues that end up in court. It's a difficult process. On the private practice side, I had some exposure to that. And what we want to do is help mediate those types of things. So we're in the process of frankly building out our facility to host something like that. We're looking forward to a cooperative relationship with the law school to try to give law students an opportunity to get some hands-on, real-world experience, and to do it in a way that has tangible benefits for the citizens. Because what anybody who's been caught up in one of those things, or really any lawsuit, understands that it's hard on both sides. And there's a volume of those issues and those concerns, and one side isn't always right. Sometimes it's a landlord issue, sometimes it's a tenant issue. But we feel like if we can get people together in a structured environment where we can facilitate that, maybe explain how the law works a little bit, not only can it lead to resolution, but it can save money and save time and tension in the process.
Stacy, there's licenses that are involved in being a citizen of Sioux Falls, whether it's a business and so forth. Jamie Palmer handles those over at City Center. So if you have specific questions, especially on liquor licenses, which are prevalent in the city's dealings, you see it at City Council all the time too, not just getting a liquor license for your business, but like a short-term use if you're having a party or a reception somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. And Jamie Palmer does a great job with that, and it does involve, there are even different types of liquor licenses. There's the malt beverage licenses, there's beer and wine licenses, but the most prominent and the most commonly discussed are the liquor licenses. There are the short-term uses if somebody wants to have a special event, jazz fest and those types of things. You need a permit to be able to handle alcohol that way. Other areas where there are licensing that people may not be aware of is in the areas of taxis, sidewalk use type licenses. If there are special events going on, they want to use the sidewalks. Peddler's license, those types of things. So yeah, people may have questions. Absolutely, that's when they can come to us as well.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get more into how city government involves with your office as well, too, including the city council. All right. If you have any questions at all about getting a license for the city of Sioux Falls, we were just talking about now, there's many other licenses that you may not know that you need to have, including raffles. You can find out about them when you click on siouxfalls.org, go to departments and city attorney's office and click on licensing. You'll find all the information to know that you need to know to make sure that you have the correct license for what you want to do. We'll be right back.
30 seconds. It's the amount of time this public service announcement will last, and it's the amount of time on your commute that you may be slowed down in a cone zone. These city employees are working hard, and all they ask in return are two simple things.
Number 1, stay alert.
Number 2, slow down.
They all want to get home to their families too, and your patience is greatly appreciated. When you see amber flashing lights or orange traffic cones, stay alert and slow down.
Welcome back to Sioux Falls Directions. I'm Reed Holson with Stacy Kooistra, our city attorney for the city of Sioux Falls. Got to ask you this question. A lot of people wonder, what's different about being an attorney for government versus private practice?
Nothing.
Nothing?
I'm kidding.
It's got to be a different job, isn't it? A little bit?
It is very different, and probably the most stark contrast between the two is that in private practice you're representing an individual, right? So we talked earlier about how the city of Sioux Falls is my client, but I provide that advice to its elected officials. In the private practice world, of course, you're entering into an attorney-client relationship with an individual person or an entity, a business of some sort, and so the duties are somewhat different. And I compare that to my JAG position on the Air Force side, the South Dakota Air National Guard. The client there is the Air Force, but I give advice to our local commanders for the most part. And so while it sounds fundamental and basic, always knowing who your client is very important. And so when it comes to on the private practice side, of course, it's how you make your living and you bill as a function of your time and investment, invested time. On the city side, as I'm an employee like everybody else, and so I had to get used to not tracking my time, and that's when you do that for 14 years. That's a very different process, but it's freeing in some ways. I've really enjoyed the transition because it gives me an opportunity to see the law from a very different point of view. I'm in very different parts of the code now. With the assistant attorneys and the continuity that they have, it's just been invaluable because I don't come in with all those answers, right? I've been here 7 months. I'm not an expert on all of those things, and so I rely on them greatly. And they're remarkable in their knowledge and their experience. And so for people to understand how that system works, you come in and you're appointed, and you're different than the civil service positions that the rest of your staff has. You're in charge of that department, but they've just been great in supporting me and helping me make that transition. Because when you come in, you're always concerned that I'm new to this. I don't pretend to understand Chapter 9 the way I did Chapter 15 when I'm in the law, but they do. And so that, I think, has helped the city benefit from not missing a beat in the quality of its legal advice, but also as you come in with a new administration and meet a bunch of counselors, that I'm able to give the advice that they need.
And as you mentioned before in our first segment, you represent all of city government, including the administrative side, headed by the mayor and the city council. As you watch the city council meetings, we see you sitting up there with them. What's your function during a city council meeting?
Well, that's a great question, and a different version of that question I often get is, what are you thinking while you're up there?
Right.
But it's different than what maybe a lot of people think, right? And the reason for that is because sometimes people see, and the citizens see, the elected officials really going at it. The structure of a city council meeting has the mayor as the presiding officer, and he's not partisan. So he ensures that he brings the agenda items forward, discusses what they are, has the clerk do it, and then facilitates the public input, the discussion between the council. My position is to basically help ensure that due process is followed. If people watch the meetings, they understand that I get questions from time to time, some of which I have an idea are coming because it's a difficult area of the law, maybe, and some that come right out of the blue. So I do my best to be prepared to have an answer that helps guide them through that, because as it's recorded and as it goes and as decisions are made, there's some things you can't go back on. So my job is to equip all 9 of my clients, right, in the best interest of the city, to be able to do their job and to do their best and vote the way that they would like to go, or how they view a particular issue. And just to touch on that, so I think where the counterintuitive piece may come in is that when things, from a public perspective, things may really be, I wouldn't say deteriorating, but it's a difficult meeting because there are strong opinions and close votes and that type of thing. That's honestly when I'm most comfortable. And the reason for that is because I know the system is working. We're all familiar with the quote, there are 2 things you don't want to see being made, right? Laws and sausage. And so when laws are being made, it's difficult, but my goal is to ensure, to the extent that I'm able, that the process and that the system is legally done, equitably done, and done in a way that the citizens can have confidence that even if they disagree with an outcome, that it was done in a way that that honors the law, the letter and spirit of the law.
I'm just amazed at how do you know everything that you need to know when you're sitting at that dais up there.
Well.
There's a lot to know. Absolutely. So law school had to have been tough, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And there's some other really important functional areas that your office deals with. Charter revision, for instance. Our city has a charter that we have to follow. And how often do they meet, and what's your role in that?
They meet a number of times on an annual basis, and what they basically do is, like this coming May, so next month, they'll have a meeting where they're basically going to review a portion of the charter, and they break the charter up into a number of sections. And what they do is ensure that they've covered the entire charter throughout the year. So it gets revisited depending on a schedule that'll be set in May. And when they do that, when you think of the charter, I would encourage people to think of it as the city's constitution. That's what makes it different than the ordinances that are being debated and voted on and passed, or that fail at the city council meetings. And so the Charter Revision Committee has a very important role in that you don't treat the Constitution the same way that you do statutes and laws. And so what they do is they have a different level of analysis as to whether the charter should be revised or not, as opposed to just, like I said, the laws in general.
All right. Board of Ethics is important too. All of us as citizens have seen that mentioned in the news before. Governments have to operate ethically, and it's ruled by the ethics provision of ordinance. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Is it Chapter 12?
Chapter 35.
Chapter 35.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And there are a number of aspects to ethics, conflict of interest being a common one, because what happens when you're a city employee or an officer of the city is that you're entrusted with information and knowledge, and to ensure that that's handled properly, confidentially when appropriate, and when not, that it's released. And so what I explain to people a lot of times about ethics versus morals, and I like to ask that question when I teach ethics, is the difference is that ethics are the rules, right, the laws, and by definition they're in a gray area, and whereas morals are more of that internal guidance that each of us has. On the ethics side, you have an ethics board because of the gray area and the ambiguity of a lot of issues, and the need for for that to be distinct from the structure within the administration and the city itself. They can come in, and it's five citizens, and they have to meet at least quarterly, and it's one of the few boards that I can't delegate my role in that. So I have to be in each ethics board meeting myself, provide that advice directly to them, and they primarily make decisions in 2 categories, one of which are complaints and one of which are advisory opinions. And we encourage our employees, if they run into an area where they're not sure, for example, if they're asked to serve on a board and that board has some dealings with the city, they can bring that up preemptively we stay in that ounce of prevention category and come in, and the ethics board really welcomes those. It's an easy process where they ask questions and they really try to get to the heart of the issue. And I think it's something, honestly, I've really enjoyed coming here because it helps to instill confidence, I think, in our citizens that people can come in and ask those questions. And and for the most part, they're public. There can be times where it needs to be confidential because of sensitivity or proprietary information, whatever the case may be. But as far as I know, they're generally open, and people can come in and see how the decisions are made. And generally with 5, again, distinct citizens, not part of the city, they come to some very good conclusions, and we keep a body of those decisions on hand so that if people have similar questions or just want to do some research, they're all available for people to review.
So if someone's interested in bringing an issue in front of the ethics group or the board, can they do that? How would they do that? They
can go online, or they can call our office and we'll help facilitate that. Not unlike the Human Relations Commission, people don't just know how to do that. It's a simple form where they just fill out some basic information, and then in basically narrative fashion they describe what the issue or what their concern is and what their question is.
All right. Well, Stacy, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
And welcome to the city of Sioux Falls.
Well, thanks, Reed. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Stacy Kooistra, your city attorney. If you'd like to know more about the functions of the city attorney's office, go to siouxfalls.org, click on departments, and click on city attorney's office. You'll see licensures, you'll see ethics, you'll see everything we talked about here today. And if you need to come in and see us at the city of Sioux Falls, the city attorney's office, for instance, for the human relations issues or ADA issues, stop in on the first floor of City Hall. That's where their offices are located. We have an information person at the front desk can help direct you to where you need to go. I'm Reed Holson. Thank you to Stacy Kooistra, and thank you for watching Sioux Falls Directions.